Welcome, everyone. Well, that's quite loud. Apologies. So, almost exactly a year today at COP26, we celebrated the launch of the Global Alliance for Sustainable Energy. Now, we're here to update you on the Alliance's first year of work. And just for those who aren't aware of it, following that launch, I mean, this alliance really brings together the full energy ecosystem from utilities, component suppliers, manufacturers across wind and solar. Now, we're here at COP27 at the Wind and Solar Pavilion, the Global Wind and Solar Councils. Now, last year was a bit of a watershed moment, I think, in terms of energy predictions and net zero scenarios, where for the first time ever, the International Energy Agency, as well as the International Renewable Energy Agency, both had wind and solar as the key pillars of our 2050 net zero scenarios. Now, with the massive ramp up, which is around sort of 3 to 4 times the installed capacity we need every year in terms of renewable energy, wind and solar, that we need to be created. There could be a lot of challenges to that. And this is exactly what the Alliance has been set up to do. So today we're going to hear about a matter related to circular economy and design, decarbonizing supply chain, as well, and other matters related to labor and human rights that the Alliance is also looking to tackle. Now, I think since the Alliance has been founded last year and launched, these issues have only come into sharper focus with geopolitical and macroeconomic challenges. So the Alliance is continuing to grow, both geographically and in terms of bringing in more of that ecosystem. And we're represented today by a moderator, for example, from Student Energy, so we're trying to bring in sort of civil society and NGO groups to really bring that full picture in today. So I'm also happy to let everyone know here that the Global Wind, Energy and Solar Councils will be taking over the Secretariat in 2023, so we're very proud to be hosting this event here and really accelerate this transition in a sustainable way. So on that note, we'll get into a bit more detail, and I'd like to invite up Giovanni Tula from Nella Green Power to give our first keynote.
Thanks, Anderson. Thanks a lot, everyone, for being here, for listening, participating to this event. And first of all, let me thank you, Global Wind, Energy and Solar Council, for hosting the event and for taking the challenges of hosting the Secretariat from next year. I'm very honored to be here to represent and to talk about the first concrete examples and output of the Global Alliance for Sustainable Energy, which is the position paper on circular economy. This is the proof that when we put together different actors, different players in a multilateral engagement, then we can create something very, very important. And in this specific case, not only we have worked on the position paper, but we have also set precise and measurable commitment that you will see at the end of the presentation. So there should be a presentation, but I'm still waiting. Okay, let me start talking about the fact why we are we are talking about circular economy. Next one, please. Okay, thanks. Here we are. Circular economy. I know you know that renewables have tackled the issue of CO2 emission for electricity generations because at the end of the day, thanks to renewable technology, we have decoupled the generation of electricity from the CO2 emissions. Now, today, the renewable technology are the most, by far, the most cost-effective and sustainable technology for generating electricity. But that's not enough. You know, considering what Emerson was saying before, that we are in front of an impressive increase of renewables, an increasing growth of renewables in the next years, we definitely need to take care of sustainability along the entire supply chain. And circular economy plays a very important role because thanks to the circular economy approach, we can definitely support the decarbonization process by reducing the emissions of the raw materials and the manufacturers. But also, the circular economy approach can stabilize the supply chains. And also, more than that, they can provide a lot of social benefits, including new jobs, but also a better respect and control of human rights. And we will talk about it in a few months from now, because a new position paper will be released in the next months about the human rights. If you go to the next slide, please, we see that basically the working group was participating many members, and it was chaired by Enel Green Power and vice chaired by Trina and Nordex Acciona. But the contributions were very extensive. All the members participated actively. In terms of content, here on the right you can see, you know, the agenda, the index of the position paper, where the most important chapter are the one in which we have defined the strategy already adopted by some members in terms of circular economy, and also the initiative that can be inspirational for the industry because have already been implemented by other industries. And the most interesting chapter is the number 6, where the industry state-of-the-art are included, also the commitments that the members of the Alliance are going to take. If you go to the next slide, please, we see basically that the working group has set some targets for the development of the works. And starting from the major target, that is the design for circularity. And the idea is to start designing the circularity from the beginning, but to get there, we need to fix some issues. The first one is about transparency. We need to track and to know from the materials are coming from, so it's very important to work on this aspect. And the other one is on defining identifying some standards for measuring and for tracking the impacts. And the last but not least and less important target is about the recyclability of the materials. If you go to the next slide, please, we can see that the challenge is huge. We know that the material that are needed to support the growth of renewables are very large in numbers, more than 30. And for that, we decided to set some priorities in order to have a starting point to start working from some material, and we selected 4. Aluminum and copper that are extensively used in the electrical sector, especially it doesn't work when I turn left. Especially aluminum that is used in the solar panel for the frame, but also steel, which accounts for 87% of the bill of material for wind turbines, and the silicon, which is which stay at the core of the solar panel. If you go to the next slide, we can see that in terms of strategies, basically the working group has identified strategies, as I said before, in enhancing transparency. Why? Because it's important to identify potential hotspots in the supply of raw materials, hotspots in terms of environment and social impacts. And it's very important to know where the hotspots are in order to take actions. The other one is to boost the recyclability of the raw materials. By designing introducing design criteria in order to extend the life of equipment first, or material then, in order to avoid the need for additional raw materials, to reduce the pressures on minerals supply. Now, if we go to the next slide, we're going to finally enter in the commitment section, where all the members of the Alliance are committing in defining a roadmap for the implementation of circular economy models. And together, we have also set interim standards in order to make this, to resolve the problem of the traceability and the transparency, but also to identify standards for the measurement of the impacts. And the last slide shows you practical examples or practical KPI that we want to measure in order to measure the improvements and the progress of our journey towards circularity. The first is about the impact measurement. APD standards integrated with the bill of materials has been identified by the working group as the standard to measure the impacts across the value chain, from raw material extraction up to the end of life of the equipments. And integrated with the bill of material, because we want to, let's say, enhance the EPD in order to measure also the percentage of recycled material content in the equipment. The second commitment is about supply chain sustainability. The commitment is starting from some of the key materials identified to foster and achieve the traceability and the auditing of the supply chain. This is very, very ambitious target, ambitious commitment, but without that, we cannot measure the improvements. If we do not measure what is going on, we can't say that we are improving. And the last but not least is about the percentage of material certified by the external bodies on sustainability. We think that we definitely need to give more, provide more trust to our customers, to the final customers as well, about the sustainability of the entire supply chain on how we are generating electricity. That's basically a very short summary of the position paper. I would like to thanks again all the members that have contributed. Take the occasion also to thank the Enel Foundation for having hosted the Secretariat this year, for having provided some contribution to the position paper, and again, thanks GWEC and GSC for the support and for the new, let's say, support for as a Secretariat next year. Thanks.
There will be a chance to ask questions at the when the panel is up here, but well, unless there are any immediately right now, but I think we could just run through the schedule. I mean, one comment on raw materials, especially critical minerals. I mean, this is absolutely mission critical. It presupposes the entire energy transition. So targets and everything really everything is presupposed on the proper management of that sustainability. So a big issue for us as an alliance going forward. Next, I'd like to invite up Cristina Morel from Iberdrola, who is going to introduce the next presentation on decarbonization of the supply chain.
Thank you very much. So thank you. I'm very pleased to be here. I'm here also with my colleague who is with us virtually, Mónica Oviedo, who is the head of Sustainable Development and SDGs at Iberdrola. She's the one chairing working group number 1, focused on decarbonization and net zero. But unfortunately, she is not here today. So since I'm here physically, we are both of us with you today. So I'll be very brief. Since today it's the Decarbonization Day at COP, it's a very good opportunity precisely to present the paper that is currently being worked on working group number 1 on decarbonization and net zero. Monica, as I mentioned, my colleague, is chairing this working group and working with the other members. They are currently finalizing the paper that we hope will be very soon released and presented. This alliance and of course the working group number 1 involve different companies, associations, organizations, academia, and they are looking for common positions, common understandings, common methodologies to fully integrate decarbonization into all the operations business. So this paper precisely is taking into account different positions, different sensibilities from different actors, from different geographies. And the innovative added value of this paper is that utilities are working hand in hand with all the suppliers to decarbonize the value chain. So this is the main positive point of this working group that is being developed. The position paper of this working group reflects the compromise of the electricity sector with decarbonization and with the net zero objective, in line, of course, with the Paris Agreement, and with the objective of not increasing temperature more than 1.5 degrees at the end of this century. And they are doing their work listening very carefully to science and taking into account all the science advice. According to data from the International Energy Agency, and as you may know, electricity and heat generation sectors account for almost half of the CO2 emissions and at global level, and therefore to decarbonize is very urgent so that we can ensure to achieve the net zero scenario by 2050. But it is important for the transition of the power sector and of the electricity sector itself, but also to enable and to facilitate the transition of other industries and sectors that depend on it. The decarbonization of the power sector is therefore a huge opportunity to lead the economy and also the society of the future. And in this sense, since population is growing, demand of electricity will be growing during this decade and after that, and therefore it makes it more urgent even to accelerate the transition and the decarbonization. How can we do this? This can be done through the massive deployment of renewable energies that are cheap and that are competitive now. It can be done through the development of efficient solutions, through the promotion of smart grids that bring as well new opportunities to create green jobs and new employment. This means that this working group is working with all the value chain, so it addresses scopes 1 and 2, but also, of course, scope 3 emissions that are critical to achieve the net zero ambitions. This working group, this also means to work in alliances, to work together, because it's the only way that we can move faster and that we can accelerate the transition. We have to work together in partnership, in alliances like the Global Alliance for Sustainable Energy, and that is why, well, at Iberdrola we're very happy to participate in this alliance and to chair this working group. My colleague Monica, as I mentioned, is connected virtually, so she can complete and she can answer to your questions, if any. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cristina. I'm not sure if we have anything from Monica virtually to add at this stage. No. Okay. I think we...
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. Hello. Yes. Thank you. Yes, I can see. Hello, thank you everybody, and apologies for not being there with you. I would like to comment a little bit on the details that, as Cristina mentioned, in the working paper, that it's almost concluded, so we will be publishing it in the following weeks, because it's a real challenge, and it has been mentioned, and it's really very challenging for the sector to have our scope 1, 2, and 3. As you know, from the utility sector, we can work with renewables, as Cristina was mentioning, but we have to include this emission from scope 3. And it has been stated internally in the group that from the solar and wind sector and the academia are being involved, that Scope 3 is one of the main challenges, and we have identified barriers that we have to overcome. Different speed in the geographies where we are present. It goes with the different ambitions in the sector. So we have to work together in order to increase the awareness, because Scope 3 for us is very relevant, but we cannot. We have some problems to identify the CO2 coming from suppliers. Although we are doing our best efforts, methodology is not clear, and we have different perspectives. So I think it will be very, very nice for you to understand the barriers, but also the opportunities. We have selected some great best practices among the group, among the members of the group. So we are learning, among others, from ENAN, EDP, from all the members with our best practices. Iberdrola has also, for sure, included our practice in our supply engagement. That's very relevant. So with that, I would like to finish and thank you all, and happy to answer any question that you could have. Thank you.
Great. I think we're going to move on to the panel. I think, Monica, if you're going to stay connected perhaps for after, we're going to be more of a Q&A. But I'd like to welcome Meredith Adler from Student Energy, who's going to be moderating our panel. Student Energy, an ally of the Alliance as well. So thank you very much for joining us again.
Thank you so much for having me. Like you said, I'm Meredith Adler. I'm the Executive Director of Student Energy. So we're a network of 50,000 youth in 130 countries, and we do skill and capacity building for young people to get into energy. But we've been very excited to be part of the Alliance because this is really what young people are focused on, is not just can we get solar deployed, but also what are the human rights involved, what are their supply chains, and how do we decarbonize. So very excited to see all of these corporate leaders working on this as well. And so with that, I would like to invite each of you up to join me as well. So Giovanni Tula, if you would like to come back from Enel here. We have Miguel Viana from EDP and EDRP. Luis Augusto Figueira from Electrobras, and Gail Schuler from 3M as well. All right. Great to welcome each of you up here on the stage. So we have some questions for all of you, as well as some things around your specialties. I believe we might have one more mic to share amongst us. But I am told they should not cross paths. The microphones need to stay on different sides. All right, so I'd like to ask you each to also introduce yourselves and a little bit about your work as you answer our first question here. But seeing as the Global Alliance is in its first year, people are really just getting to know this work and what the focus is. So could you each please explain what the role of the Global Alliance is for you, and how it's working towards decarbonization of the energy sector, and tell us a little bit about the CEO pledge and how this can be effective. Maybe we'll start with you here, Gail.
Well, it's a pleasure to join you here today. We're really excited about being part of the Global Alliance. At 3M, we work across virtually every industry, and when it comes to sustainability, we think about science driving the effort. We think about urgency of action, but most relevant for our Global Alliance, we think about collaboration between groups. So in the renewable energy sector, it's an incredibly exciting portion for us. We are excited to be partnering with Enel and others, Electrobras, across the board on providing solutions in this space. And we think that working together on the on the work papers, the working groups, and aligning in this way with the Global Alliance is a really powerful way to bring together our groups and to help us be united to solve the challenges that we face.
Yeah, I think maybe I will.
Hi, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be here. I was thinking about the Alliance when it begins. It begins in a virtual world. Some of the people that are here now, we are meeting each other for the first time. And I was thinking about that, what joined us? We have the same purpose of a better world, with a discarbonating world, with climate justice, some of very important issues that we have to deal with. It's a very important opportunity to meet each other, and I think that the Alliance can boost this pledge you asked me, giving the example, because we are talking about big companies, big suppliers, that are committed to practice this new order, this new way of doing business. So I think that we can move on with these people working together, and this is a big, important movement.
Let's try with this one. Well, it's a pleasure to be here with the Global Alliance. I think so. I'm representing EDP, which is a renewables operator. So we are present in 28 countries globally. So we install a lot of wind farms and solar panels in the world. And of course, I think this alliance is fantastic too, because we need the manufacturers of solar equipment and the manufacturers of the cables, the transformers, the wind farms, etc. And also they need us as a client, I imagine. I would say one of the main, I work also on investor relations, and one of the main topics that we have had in the last couple of years has been supply chain. So it's something that we were not used to. So that probably shows that in order to reach these targets of decarbonization, we need to, and we are hearing at COP27 that we have all these issues around the pace of we need to install renewables fast enough in order to comply with the targets. And in order to be fast, we have to, of course, suppliers, manufacturers and operators and governments have to work all together. Wind suppliers with the wind manufacturers with all the challenges that we have seen in the last couple of years in terms of operating margins and raw materials, etc. Solar manufacturers with all the challenges that we see in geopoliticals between Asia and the Americas, etc., which has also been challenging. And I think we have to find the best way that we can all together overcome these challenges and manage to continue putting megawatts on the field and producing green energy. That is what we are here for. So I think it's a great opportunity to work together, manufacturers and operators in the same with the same target, which is let's deliver megawatts for corporates, for consumers, and for the countries to which we work for.
Yeah, when a couple of years ago the venture started, the alliance started, the idea came up, and we started to talk to each other. I mean, with some of us, so we could leverage on our networks, and we discovered that we were all on the same page, because everyone felt the need to do something in order to decarbonize and to improve the sustainability of the supply chain. But everyone knew that alone we couldn't go ahead, because we couldn't do nothing in order to change this industry. And some of us decided to try, and everyone was scared. Myself, I was scared about the challenge. It's still a huge challenge. But at the end of the day, talking to the others, I understood that everyone wanted to do it. And all together, we decided to create this, that I see as a platform, the Global Alliance as a platform in which we bring our experiences, we bring our expectation, we discuss, we try to find solutions and practical solutions in order to move on and to try to really improve the sustainability of the supply chain. For this is important that all the actors are present, starting from the, the manufacturers, the suppliers of the manufacturers, the NGOs, and of course the customers. 3M is a very important of them. Was on the first that accepted to participate, to give us their advice, their expectation, and so on, and the same for the others.
Excellent. Great. Well, thank you to each of you for expressing how important the Alliance is at this point. And our next question is really something that's quite dear to me, is really around what is the intersection here between circularity and sustainability and the just transition. And I think for us in particular, sometimes the just transition has a lot of different elements, but I think circularity is really where we get into communities and how you're impacting things around you with the materials that you're using. So Gail and Miguel, I would love for you to comment on that as well.
Well, I love this space as well. At 3M, we have 3 pillars around our sustainability effort. So Science for Circular is one of those. Science for Climate is the second, and Science for Communities, because we believe that our science can really help make a difference. And we have a responsibility with, on the order of 10,000 scientists around the world, we can really make a difference in this space. So we're excited about what we can do from that perspective. I'd like to give you one example of a learning that I've had in the last several years when it comes to the renewable energy transition and looking out for justice for all peoples. And yes, we focus a lot on circularity, so I can give you many, many examples of circular efforts. But where we intersect with communities is a really critical piece, since you said your passion is there. When we were starting to roll out our renewable energy programs, the first things we did is we put some renewable energy on our sites. Great, good progress. Then we went into some power purchase agreements, we explored that. Then we went into more and more different options. And one of the things we realized is we moved to a specific, relatively smaller community in Minnesota where we had a large manufacturing site, is as we started to do what we thought was the smartest thing from a technical perspective, we were putting it on site. We were going to bring it in, we were going to have our engineers work on it, it would be a short ohmic loss, it was going to be a great solution. But when we started talking with the community, we started to realize that if we did that, if we put our own solar and wind on our facility, we would actually negatively impact their cost. So the cost to the community to get any electricity, but particularly renewable energy, would go up. And then we also spoke with our local provider, the utility there, and they realized that if we put it on our own, we essentially began competing with them. So we found that by partnering with our utility in that case, it was really the better thing for the community. So I think that's one of the things that we keep in mind, and it was counterintuitive to me at the beginning of the process, but now that's a really positive way that we choose to go forward in terms of partnering with communities to actually help us make our footprint more renewable and the broader community more renewable as well.
I think the issue of circular economy, and as it was explained before by my colleague, the raw materials are more and more scarce. So we are having issues, and of course renewables need a lot of raw materials. So I think it's good to start working what we'll be doing within 30 years, because in 30 years, it will be probably the pressure will be even higher in terms of raw materials. So working when we are starting to build stuff, how we are going to dismantle it and split it and recycle it. So having really a long-term view on 30 years, I think it's fantastic. Of course, we have also the heritage from the wind farms and what we are seeing in terms of recycling of blades, etc. All the challenge that we'll have in the next 10 years. But maybe 20 years ago, there was no technology was not so advanced, so we could not think about that recycling. So I think it's fantastic that on solar we can now do that work well in advance. So it's going to be critical.
It's also for me the question?
If you'd like to comment, you may. Otherwise, I have some more.
Okay. No, that's fine. No, yeah, I totally agree with what has been said so far. I think it's circular economy can really provide a better, they can really improve the pressure that there exists today on the critical material, the raw materials, and this has very often some. Can we change the microphone because this one is not working well? Okay, much better. I was saying that especially on the raw material side, there are some implications with the social aspects. So a circular approach can improve a lot. It can bring a lot of benefits in terms of social aspects. I was referring to the human rights before during my speech. And because there is a strict connection between, the extractive system and the human rights abuse. I'm not saying that everyone is abusing on that, but there are some correlation. A circular economy approach can, improve a lot these aspects, as well as to create new jobs of quality. Can reduce a lot of, the dependency from raw materials, and also from the reducing the risk of the scarcity.
I would like to add a point that Tula said about looking these different aspects in a whole sense. He said about circular economy, we are talking about climate adaptation, we are talking about human rights, but you have to see it as a whole. If you see each part separate, it's difficult. And probably you cannot join the best of each part. So the work of the Alliance is trying to connect all these aspects. So we have some different groups that are integrated, and when we read the documents, the papers, you can see the integration of these different groups, because these groups we have prioritized, and then we think that they can join working together and trying to make a consensus about this idea. We can have a better solution for this problem that we are living at this moment.
Yeah, I think it's great how you all are pointing out how circularity does, really impact the material piece, but also it does have a lot of impact on people in general and reduce, frankly, our impact on people. Miguel, I'm wondering if you could quickly comment, you mentioned the raw materials piece. How difficult is it right now to be procuring raw materials that you feel are truly sustainable or meeting the standards that you would like to see in the future? I think it's for...
No, what we see is that obviously in the past there was a big stability in raw materials, and that has completely changed in the last couple of years. Of course, you have to have different sourcing, so you have to diversify your sourcing. Also, what we see is that with our suppliers and the wind turbine manufacturers, solar panels, the management of risk of commodities and raw materials has to be integrated between manufacturers, between the whole supply chain, the operators, and even sometimes the clients. That risk is probably one of the main issues today in the industry. Also, creating some issues even in financial sustainability to some manufacturers. So it's important that we manage well that. So more and more, there's this room for long-term partnerships, also in terms of having more stable contracts, which is going to be important in the industry, because manufacturers need visibility on their future sales, and the clients also need visibility on having available equipment, so more and more you'll have that. And then you have now this issue of protectionism that we are seeing in the countries, wanting more local content, which is another challenge both for manufacturers and for the operators. And also because the operators need to offer competitive pricing of renewables for their clients. And there's also the issue of availability. So, okay, you can have these measures of local content, but let's say facilities take years to build, training of people, so renewable jobs, of course, but so this is another challenge on the objective of deploying renewables fast and cheap on the most efficient way. So it's another layer of complexity that we are seeing regarding the development of the last couple of years.
If I can comment on that, regarding the difficulties, basically, one of the elements is that the supply chain is really complex. It's scattered. There are a lot of layers, a lot of tiers. It's very difficult to know a material the region come from. I mean, if you want to know where is manufactured your PV panel or turbine, is possible, but if you want to know from where is coming the ore for this to manufacture, to generate steel, is almost impossible today. And this is a lack of sustainability, lack of visibility, then is linked to the fact that there are a lot of sub-suppliers, sub-suppliers that whose dimension is small. I mean, the company are in average pretty small. And this create a lot of problems because there is a less sensitivity on sustainability. And the last complication is that there is a lack of standards. Within the industry or across the industry, you know, and that's what we want to try to close this gap with this kind of commitment that we have taken.
Does anyone else want to comment on the raw material piece? No? All right. So moving on a little bit, just a question for all of you is, or zooming out a little, I suppose, is what is the effect of climate change on the electricity sector's current value chain? Gail, did you want to go?
I would complement because I was thinking about Tula said. I agree that the suppliers has a big challenge to adapt this production to this circular economy. But maybe in the future, as we see the whole chain of value, we see clients also, maybe clients can claim for a full renewable and certificated energy. If you think in the near future, when the client can select energy that is renewable and that he knows that the production of this energy was with suppliers that are certified, it can be a value also. So I think that at that moment we are, I don't say that we are beginning, because in some countries or some regions maybe they have this opportunity to begin with suppliers. In some other countries, for example in my country, and I know that in Africa and in some other countries, maybe we have some difficulties to obtain suppliers that have supplier material certified, but that's a first step, and we have to begin. We have to begin this action, because I think it's an opportunity for the future, and maybe to try to engage these clients and customers, telling them about this possibility. I think it's important.
I'll go back to your question about how climate effects are impacting the electrical grid. And I'm sure those of you who spend all of your time in the electrical grid will have more to say, but I'll talk about from the 3M perspective, because we certainly see the impact to many industries, every industry in one way or another, from climate effects. But when we look at particularly extreme weather events, that's where we see the impact from our products going into the electric grid. So for example, we see with our customers in the electrical utility space or the electrical supply chain, we see that they're looking for a smarter grid. They're looking for a grid that can identify effects and switch directions and switch connectivity, what I would call a smart grid. And so we're really excited to be able to help produce and innovate with our customers to help make the grid smarter, so you can sense disruptions in your electrical current and your voltage drops that are indicative of a disturbance in the supply chain, and you can make the necessary changes, ideally earlier before anybody's electricity goes out. So that's one thing we see. We also see that when a severe storm goes through, that there can be a need to rebuild. I mean, severe storms, right? And so, some of the products that we offer in that space, we have an aluminum-based conductor that helps reduce the ohmic loss along the cables, and helps actually, as a result, drive more current through a smaller cable, and then be able to take over longer distances with the same amount with the towers, and so really be more environmentally friendly as you rebuild after storms. But there's so many other things that you all, I know, are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So I'll turn it over to one of you to talk about it. You have to be impacted in many, many ways.
Well, it is true. I mean, the climate change is already affecting the sector, the industry sector. And the result is that basically we need to invest in the redesign of the electrical system in order to improve the resilience of the system in the new condition. And these are the examples that Gail brought to our attention as one of the examples that we were that are, how we are facing this problem. The other impact is about the resource availability. I mean, the resource of wind and water probably will change. There are some areas where today are abundant and tomorrow will not, and vice versa. So this will change. So the greatest difficulty is basically to foresee and to predict what's going to happen in future in terms of climate, and that's going to pose risks to the business, and of course it poses risk also to return on investment in general. But I think that any company today is dealing with that, has defined also new, let's say, put it in positive, new job opportunities for assessing the climate risk that some years ago didn't exist, this type of job, and just to finding something which is positive in this difficult situation.
Well, I think it's important to remember that probably the next decade of renewables, probably we have faced one of the biggest innovation revolutions in terms of technology of the last century. So probably comparable to the heat and coal in the late 19th century, or electricity. So this renewables is a big technological disruption. And I think if you see the first renewables that were built and what do you have today, so of course we see the wind farms of 0.2 megawatts, and now we see these turbines of 15 megawatts. We have these pilots, for example, in floating wind offshore, which they resist these biggest storms. In solar, the bifacial and all the improvements. I remember still solar that costed 600 euros per megawatt hour. So I think technology will adapt. So of course renewables will have to be also stronger. But I think the sector, being the manufacturers obviously, but also the operators, with all the experience, all the data that we have been collecting, will work on more and more resilient assets, grids, generation assets that will cope well with the climate change and with the challenge of the more volatile weather.
Excellent. And so kind of diving back into supply chain a little bit, Gail, this question is for you, but what are the supply chain decarbonization drivers? And, both within the energy industry, but, 3M makes probably more products than could be named. So what are you seeing from the business side across your value chain?
So clearly 2022 has been a year marked by supply chain challenges. We officially quote our number of products, by the way, 55,000. Yeah, I think your description might be more accurate than mine. We find, whether it's sourcing pulp and paper or materials for cabling or even semiconductor devices that go into some of the smart grid technology, as well as plastics and other materials that we source. It is a constant focus. It's a really critical job right now, and those folks are really busy. The catch is, at the same time, we are expected to, and we are committed to, better understanding that supply chain. What is the footprint of that supply chain? What, from a human rights perspective, is that supply chain doing what it needs to? It's a higher expectation every day, and working with our suppliers is a challenge, and then serving as a supplier into others is a challenge when you're coming through those places. And then if you throw in the inflation to the mix, oh my, we've got a significant environment going on here that's a challenge.
Thank you. And I don't know if anyone else wanted to comment as well on the drivers of decarbonization in the supply chain and everything.
Okay, I can comment just to say that obviously it's important, but as it was referred, 2022 even in the renewable space and all over, I think the issue is to have the equipment. Right now is really the short-term pressure of having the supply chain flowing. But I think it will come naturally. Definitely, we have more and more partnerships also with our own suppliers that we are closing these renewable PPAs and reinforcing clean energy in their production systems. I think it's going to be gradual. It's important that players work together with their suppliers, and definitely it's going to be an important medium-term target. Even if today, let's say, the focus, I think, all the renewable supply chain. As part of this, we are contributing to naturally solve that issue. That is, as all the electrical systems will be more and more clean, as you will have a more electrification of energy consumption, this will be big contributors to that. So we are really on the spotlight of that transformation.
Just a last quick point is about the fact that it's about setting objectives and targets for ourselves. I mean, if we all the members commit to become net zero sooner or later, this will drive the decarbonization. And this is, you will see some surprise in the near future where we will be releasing the new position paper on net zero. And because I think that if we all together decide that this is a priority, then everybody else aligns. So it's important to create a scale where we can work on this.
Excellent. And Luis, I don't know, you are welcome to comment on this, but I also have another question for you, just around how are you looking at creating mechanisms for a more inclusive transition, and particularly looking at countries like China and India and Brazil that might not have had the same mechanisms in place before?
That's an important question. We are thinking about decarbonization, and of course, I think it's similar when you begin a new project. You have to measure the impact of beginning a new project with communities, with biodiversity, with the environmental, and of course when we make this transition, for example, for a community there is used to explore a coal mine. If you define to stop producing your coal plant, what will have to do with this community? What will be the future of this community? So we as utility companies, we have two big challenges. First, to decide how to turn off these power plants, for example, that increase this pollution, this effect, this impact in the environmental, and think about the social people and people that are involved with this production, because we have also to think about a transition, economic transition for them, because if we forget them, we will create another problem, a social big problem for all of us. So it's a big challenge for, I think not only for Brazil, China, and for undeveloped countries, but all the countries that have to think about this transition of energy transition, but a social transition also. We have to think about this. It's not easy, and we have to plan. And the instrument to plan is to heal people that are involved with the production and are impacted with the operation, for example, of the power plant. We have to hear them before we decide to do any kind of movement. I think it's very, very important to think about this.
Excellent. And as you're bringing us onto the social impacts of this, As we approach decarbonization, there is a lot that has to change for traditionally carbon-intensive communities, and a lot of that is around decommissioning of power plants, things like that. Renewables can be much more distributed sometimes. What type of impacts are you seeing as these shifts happen, and how are you all addressing those?
Well, I think of course there are some resistance. Change has always some resistance, but I think politicians also, you have seen some interesting solutions. I think the old coal plants can be fantastic sites for green hydrogen, for example, as we are doing in Portugal and Spain. I think the new legislation in US regarding Inflation Reduction Act of providing incentives to build renewables in locations in which you had old coal sites, etc., and fossil fuels is going to be very important. Of course, it's important that you have, let's say, you have an alignment in terms of social support for renewables, and these segments of the society that are against renewables, they can also feel that they are involved, that they are not part of the problem, but they are also part of the solution, and they can also benefit from the energy transition. I think just two additional points. One is that renewables, being the most competitive energy available in these days, they're also helping to solve the issue of availability, okay, and affordability, which is important. You need to develop cheap energy, and renewables today are definitely, we are talking about the most competitive energy that we have available globally, different technologies for each place. And the third point, which the not in my backyard syndrome that we are living. I think, of course, we want to solve the problem of the world, the global warming, etc., but everybody needs to contribute, and solar parks, wind farms need to be installed somewhere, and so I think we as a society, we have to be ready also to give that contribution, and that is fundamental. Being governments, central governments, local governments, local communities that have to be ready to cooperate and to give their contribution.
This is a very key topic, because we know that the energy transition will bring overall positive effects in terms of environmental benefits, the decarbonization, but also better air quality or public health, but also social advantages, because a lot of new jobs will be created. But this doesn't be equal in all the areas, because there will be areas where we know that some community relies on the carbon-intensive industries, and those will disappear, so they might suffer some problems. So what I think is that this process can't be left unregulated. It's very important to give directions that are clear and they can put people at the center of the transformation. On the public side, I say that it's very important to keep open dialogue with the private sectors in order to identify what are the regulations or the rules that can be applied in order to, let's say, as the European Community says, not leaving anyone behind. And there are some examples on there. There are some benchmarking that are already applying in some states where they have linked the authorization of building new, let's say, additional capacity of renewables with the social plan, to mitigate the negative effect of the shutdown of the plants. And there are some cases also in Europe where this is very, very effective. On the other end, on the private sector side, I think we should be really committed in finding innovative solutions. For instance, starting from the name, I'm not talking about just the phasing out, but the repurposing of the site, and committing in finding new opportunities for the sites when in our case, the coal power plant are shut down. For instance, in Enel, we are managing a fleet of 77 power plants that will be phased out currently under phase out. And for each of them, we are designing customized plan for, let's say, for giving a new life of those sites, either with providing a solution or looking for solution in the energy space, or with other third-party actors. On this regard, the last point is very important, which is a collaboration from private and public, is to invest in the capacity building. Because one of the bottleneck for the energy transition that might reflect in the social aspect is that we need a huge workforce skilled for engaging and working in the new economy. And so that can be done only with a collaboration between private and public.
Those are all great points, and I really appreciate them. I'm going to build on the last one, because whether it's working in the electrical industry with the new ways, the new jobs that are coming forward in the electrical industry, or in a manufacturing environment like 3M, or any number of our other industries, healthcare, transportation, many, even the consumer areas, science, technology, engineering, math, those areas of expertise are more critical than ever. And so whether it's providing transitional training or helping the next generation become inspired by going into these fields and having the right background to really be capable of delivering in these spaces, I think we all have a great opportunity and a tremendous challenge to make that happen. So we like to lean in on that in a lot of ways too.
Great. Gail, you just hit on my favorite topic of youth capacity building. And I think, this is very interesting conversation from my perspective, because in our world we train a lot of young people, and a lot of young people in very carbon intensive countries at this point. And you do see there's a proof point that often will help to transition a community. And for us, sometimes it's really like the old child in the family. If they can get a job doing something different, to be right here as one of these examples, then their parents are okay with their other children pursuing sustainability or pursuing something that's not as familiar to them. But and I think it was mentioned by Giovanni earlier, probably none of you started your career in sustainability, I'm just gonna guess, so the field has been very much invented over the course of your careers, but now we have to get to a place where we can systematize and scale the amount of sustainability skill sets throughout companies, not just in your departments, which is a very interesting challenge that we definitely work on quite a bit at Student Energy, but I agree it has to be a public and a private partnership. A few charities can't do all the sustainability education that needs to happen, or all the STEM education that needs to happen going forward. So it's very exciting to see you all focusing on it. And I think I just have one last question before we open it up to the audience for questions as well. But really coming back to the Alliance, how do you see the Global Alliance bringing companies together to start to work on all of these challenges? We've addressed so many things, from raw materials to circularity, and even, the way in which the energy sector is really playing a role in, yes, decarbonizing, but also needs to decarbonize itself, which is quite an interesting challenge. So what do you see the Global Alliance doing to help move this forward at really the speed and scale required?
Well, just to be quick, I see, first of all, we need to enlarge the memberships to create a critical mass in order to be more effective. And this is very important, in order to attract the interest of all stakeholders, or many stakeholders. And on the other hand, we need to be also innovative, in looking for innovative approaches, and also looking for synergies with other maybe associations, with other industries, with other initiatives that are already up and running, and they can be beneficial for us without reinventing the wheel, as we say.
In the spirit of not rethinking the wheel, I really appreciate the work that the Global Alliance for Sustainable Energy allows us to do together to standardize what does a carbon footprint look like? How do you calculate it out? How do you make sure that in this industry we're comparing consistently between groups? So I think this provides that effort, and it provides, honestly, the corollary to that is that, so one, there's the end product that everyone can review, but actually the discussion that goes into it is pretty fascinating too, because there are things that you see from different perspectives in this space, and I think it's useful to be able to have those discussions as a group with some pretty different perspectives.
I think that the Global Alliance, as we said in the beginning, is an open platform to receive ideas, to share experience, and to attract new industries, companies that have the same commitment. That's very important. We have the same commitment in the future. We have different ways, but we have the same commitment. It's very important. And this new approach to join suppliers, companies, and of course other shareholders is different because it's the way to see the question. We have to look for different perspectives of the same situation, the same issue, to share and to think about solutions. That's what I think about the Global Alliance.
Well, just to add very, very fast that I think anticipate problems is something that we can work together. So the supplier, the manufacturers need the operators need the manufacturers. So, and only together we can accelerate this transition and to deploy more megawatts, anticipate issues within 30 years, the carbon footprint, the circular economy, etc. So there's so much to do, and I think if we do it together, it will be better to everybody, and so it will be a win-win solution.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for that. I think, from my perspective, the Alliance is quite inspiring to see so many of the major global players coming together to set a standard, frankly, earlier in the game than other challenges we've faced in climate and sustainability. So it's an exciting thing to see. Do we have any questions from the audience? Yeah. Yes, I will.
Thanks very much to all the speakers for the enlightening ideas. I'm Imbo from Global Energy Interconnection. It's actually an NGO registered in Beijing, focused on renewable energy as well, sustainable energy. And I just have one question, actually. I think it is actually a common consensus that we have to develop as much as more renewable energy, wind and solar. We have to shift from fossil energy to renewable energy all over the world. And actually China is doing so. It has been mentioned, we are trying our best to promote this kind of agenda. But the thing is, I think to develop as much as more and more renewable energy is just the first step. We actually know that it's quite difficult for us to get integrated for all the renewable energy to the current energy system. And I think it's happened very frequently in China for us to, in China, some of the renewable energy, they're actually wasted. We find a solution to solve this problem, like we built a lot of UHV lines from west part of China to transmit the electricity generated from renewables to the coast, to the east coast area. I think this could be one of the solutions, but for the other continents, for the west part of China, do you find any solution for this? Just now, Ms. Gaila has mentioned smart grid, I think, which is very important, and also we know that maybe energy storage is also quite important, but currently it's kind of a little bit expensive. So my question goes to the whole panel, maybe mostly to Tuna and maybe Christina from Ijabella. So what's your solutions for the integration of the renewable energy to the current energy system from your point of view? Thank you so much.
Well, just a few elements. Basically, it's clear we are talking about renewable energies, but if you look at the roadmaps for decarbonization of many states or many countries, you see that there is an equal amount of investment needed to improve the infrastructures. I mean, for improve the transmission lines, the distribution lines, for the digitalization of the lines in order to be more effective and more reliable. There is a need of storage. Of course, the energy storage, the cost of the energy storage is going down rapidly as it was for solar panels, so they will be more and more inexpensive in future. And there is also to improve and to invest in energy efficiency in order to optimize the use of the energy. There is a lot to do also in the demand side, that we can demand and response solutions. So the first problem is to think about that renewables are intermittent and variable. If you look, because it's a forced problem, because it's a problem if you look at the single plant itself. But if you look at this as a system and you put together all the combination together with the solution that innovative solution that providers like 3M and others are providing to the system, we believe that the two things we can go together. Of course, we can't imagine to invest in renewable only and not in infrastructure. That's not feasible.
Yeah, the same. I guess it's the investment in renewables, in smart grids, in digitalization, in electrification, and for sectors that are very difficult to electrify, find innovative solutions, and of course energy efficiency, as he mentioned, and that's it. So it's mixing all of the solutions that are available.
Hi, thank you so much. And yeah, like she said, it's very inspiring hearing what you all are doing and what you're working on. So my question is, in terms of priority countries or looking at your decarbonization strategy in a local context, do you have certain regions that you're working on or you foresee in the near future, or it's just a broader scope? Thank you.
I'll start because we're in a little bit different spot. So we're actively working on a renewable energy strategy, as I mentioned before, and we have a playbook that we operate around the world quite consistently. And we have what we call our math with a path to get to where we need to do, which is we keep exceeding these goals, which is the wonderful thing about renewable energy, is it's actually going in faster than we expected it to. The way 3M has identified it is very intentionally a global goal. Now, for us, that means that we take all of the electricity that we use on a global basis, we take all of the renewable energy that the renewable electricity that we're purchasing on a global basis, and we do a simple ratio. It doesn't mean that the exact electron is going to the exact place. So what we have found is we follow the global regulations quite extensively, and we also look for where we prioritize our facilities that have the heaviest footprint. So we start there, make the biggest bang that we can, and then also look where there are incentives happening. Where can we make that switch in an incentive way? And then after that, it comes down to incentives or availability, candidly, so the external components. And then it comes down to where there's passion, because sometimes we'll have teams locally that really want to make it happen. And if they're on the bubble, I'll say, if it's not going to make a difference between if they're a big plant where things are reasonably priced versus a small plant where it's very expensive. But if they're on the bubble, we'll go to the places where people have passion. And taking this approach, so far we've been doing really well. So we originally set our first goal in 2015 that by 2025 we'd be at 25%. Well, we achieved that in 2018. So then we set our next goal, and we decided we were going to get to, in both cases, we're aligned with the RE100. So we'd say we would do 100% by 2050. But so we set our next goal, and then so 50% by 2025. And we achieved that at the end of last year. So now we're really going towards how can we go faster and how can we do better. But that approach has been pretty effective for us.
We are also trying to plan this route for decarbonization. And I think that the important thing in this moment is to specify targets for each year, and of course the goals we want to achieve. We have to think about also in the carbon market. I think it's very important, especially for us in Brazil, because we have a great potential in this market. So maybe it's a way to change the way you produce value for the shareholders. So we are thinking about this, we are studying about this, and of course we are waiting for the regulation, because it will improve and it will boost our possibilities in this area.
So we have a target to be Scope 1 and 2 carbon neutral in Scope 1 and 2 in 2030, and we want to be we are now working to be net zero by 2040. I think that there's a strong work internally on these decarbonization targets. Also, of course, in Scope 3, we'll have to work with our suppliers, so it's going to be important. I would say it's part of also of the strategy. So I think in our case we wanted to focus on renewables, and so although let's say that we talked before that thermal is still needed, so we cannot live only with renewables, but I think we are working in the direction that in the next decades we'll have more and more renewables and less fossil fuels, with a big contribution for decarbonization, and we are working on that.
Yeah, similar for us, we have committed in become net zero by 2040, scope 1, 2, and 3. Scope 3 in the upstream and downstream. It means that we're going to phase out on scope 1 all the thermal power plant by 2040, but by 2027 we are going to phase out the coal power plant, so in a few years from now. And we are also committed in, which is interesting, in scope 3 downstreams. It means that we are going to exit the retail gas market. So we are not going to sell any more natural gas to our customers, because we believe the electrification will replace the need of using for end user the natural gas. This is interesting because basically since when we have disclosed this commitment, the whole company has started in order to achieve this target, even though we have a medium and long-term objectives. And that's why I was saying before that it's important to commit in something, because if you commit in ambitious goal, then the whole organization works for achieving those goals. And if the more company or the members of Alliance, they commit in the same goal, then we can created that critical mass that support, especially when you work with suppliers, that can bring all in the same direction.
Excellent. Any other questions from the audience? I may build on what Dabira said and ask my own question. We in our work see so much demand from young people in particularly South Asia and in Africa who really want to be working in renewables, even though that is often not present in their country or their community. But I have noticed that, the Global Alliance is global, but often what you're seeing is a lot of European and North American countries collaborating, and then a few from the Global South. How are you thinking about opening up those opportunities, or what is your role in other markets where you're not currently working, but that do need to both increase electricity access and electrify a lot of what they currently have?
So it's a combination, a bunch of things, I would say, honestly. So there's some cases in Singapore, for example, we have a very large manufacturing facility, and we do have solar on the roof of it. It's actually, when it was installed, and it may still be true, but I'm not positive of this today, but when it was installed, it was the largest installation of solar in all of Singapore. So that was exciting. When the utility wasn't there for us, we just said, we'll do it. And we did that with a partner. We are actively engaged through our government affairs organization with policy in different countries around the world, because wherever we have manufacturing, our first choice is always to have the electrons be used locally, but when it's not possible, we'll go wherever we need to. And I would say that Asia right now is our biggest challenge. The other thing that we're doing is we're partnering with other companies, like our peers or our customers, to find ways to together explore negotiations that could work either with utilities or with governments to make a difference.
Well, obvious for some parts of the world, renewables is still obviously the cheapest technology, but in short term you need to have a capacity of investment and of financing, which is difficult. And I'm talking about parts of Asia, parts of Africa. So I would say that, of course, in emerging markets, if you go to countries like Brazil or Colombia or in Eastern Asia where we are present, you have strong financial sectors which support that investments, and that is critical. But I would say you have some areas, and namely if you go to part of South Asia and Africa, it's more difficult. So I think it's part of the global financial institutions also to provide that support. Of course, for us, and for the players, of course, we would be ready to be more involved. But I would say right now in Africa we have been more involved regarding access to energy, which is really a more, let's say, frontier activity. But I think as we develop and as we grow in renewables globally, more and more we will have more countries included and involved in the renewables revolution, in the energy transition, which is fundamental to be inclusive, not only socially inside each country, but also inclusive on a global scale for every country.
Yeah, just especially in in the emerging, we are in front of a very huge change of the industry in general, of the electrical system, the power system. And this will interest all countries in the world, but clearly the solutions or the action in order to support this growth are different from this, depending on the starting point, because if you're an emerging market, in general, the first priority is to create a fair and transparent regulatory framework that can incentivize the investment of private sector. And this is not given for granted. It is feasible in a very short term. And so that's why as a company, we are an actor that we are actively promoting the creation of this framework. For instance, recently in Latin America, we have been promoted the elaboration of energy transition roadmaps, engaging in 8 Latin American countries, more than 100 stakeholders per each country. And we worked with them in order to bring different point of views, supported by an independent consultant, and to create those roadmaps with actions that can inspire governments, because for each action we identify the impacts and the cost. So in this way, governments have one tool that they can use for creating this kind of overlap or improving the regulatory frameworks. But without that, there are some countries where even the cost of renewables is so cheap that nobody will invest there because the risk is too high, and there is no maybe the investment is not bankable, and there are a lot of issues. So the most important thing is to work on that, and we as a private sector can bring competencies, but then we need also a third party, an independent party that then define the rules of the game. Otherwise, this won't work. And another area very important, especially here for the continent, here in Africa, is the capacity building for the policymakers. Because sometimes there are some cases in which there are, in theory, the perfect regulatory framework, but in practice is not applied. And that's very important.
I would add a comment about this, the experience that we had in Brazil when we began to plan the development of renewable energy. So we saw a strong partnership between the government, regulation, and the financial institutions to improve and to offer possibilities for the private sectors and of course the state-owned companies to begin this development of renewable energy. So I think this can be a way for undeveloped countries like or Africa countries, okay, because without this it's very difficult to do the first step. It's very difficult.
Well, thank you all so much. I think that's the time we had for the panel. So if you'll join me in thanking the panel, and then we'll have our representative from the Global Solar Association come up to close us out. So thank you all for joining today. I learned a lot, and I hope everyone else did as well. You all can.
Thank you, Meredith. Yes, it's Francesco Luisa from the Global Solar Council. I have a few words, not to make it too long. It was a great panel, so first of all, thank you to our speakers. I think the headline here is that as huge challenges arise, the Global Alliance for Sustainable Energy is responding. And today we have seen the result, the first significant steps in the right direction after 1 year after the launch of the Global Alliance. And really these position papers couldn't come at a better time, I think, since we're at COP27, this is the Decarbonization Day, and awareness also of the huge challenges we're facing is growing. And we know that renewable energies, especially wind and solar, are the go-to. But in order to deploy the massive scale really we need all over the world, we will need to face important challenges. And it was mentioned during the panel that pressure, for example, for raw materials availability will only grow together with other challenges. So what is really great to see is that industry leaders can unite and produce shared vision on how to address these challenges. And also it was great to see that, as it was mentioned as well during the panels, that these challenges need to be addressed in an integrated approach. So seeing the decarbonization working group going hand to hand, let's say, with the circular design criteria 1, I think it's very important. And so just let me remember the audience that these are presentations of the position papers. The entire position papers are available on the Global Alliance website, so I invite everyone who cares about these issues to go on the website and check them out. And on behalf of the Global Solar Council and the Global Wind Energy Council, I want to thank everyone who participated, and especially the organizations who put effort and time and resources into these working groups. And stay tuned for the further work of the Global Alliance, upcoming work. And I wish everyone a great day here at COP27. Please hang out. Who is fortunate to be here. Enjoy this beautiful space that GSC and GWEC have at COP. Thank you to everyone who joined also virtually. And let's close with a round of applause for our speakers. Thank you.